Here we go. We're getting some people now. Sorry, everybody. It's me. I'm the worst. Hi, everybody.
No, don't say that.
Oh no, on this I am. On this, it was my fault.
Hi,
Being the
everyone.
worst. Hi, everybody. Say hi in the chat. Let us know you're here. I apologize. Thank you so much for sticking with us.
Thank you. We promise it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, we do promise. I'm so sorry. Yeah, say where you're from. Hi,
Hi,
guys.
Rebecca.
I'm
San
so,
Jose. Woo woo.
I'm so sorry about the
A
delay.
California native.
Oh, I'm getting so many emails. My phone just keeps buzzing. The link doesn't work.
Jersey. Hey, Jersey, South Carolina. Essex.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Birmingham.
my goodness. You
Spokane.
got so
PNW.
many
Awesome.
people.
Canada. Oxford. Essex, too.
The numbers are just climbing. This is crazy.
Dubai. That's amazing. Glasgow, San Jose, woo woo, Cali girls represent. I love it. Spain, Barcelona, awesome, Barcelona.
Barcelona. I say that every time. Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Oh my goodness, you guys.
Nebraska.
Thank you so much for sticking with us. I just have quarantine brain is what I think. I think I must have copied the link and like cut off one of the numbers. And you know what? People make mistakes. I'm going to forgive myself. And of course, this is the most registered event we have ever had. So we're so excited. We're just going to give it like maybe one more minute. And then we're just going to get started. I'm going
We all make
to,
mistakes. We got to learn how to pivot, how to redirect, and also just like how to stay positive, even when like things are going totally wrong.
yeah.
So this is a great example for everyone. We wanted to set the tone.
We wanted to set the tone. So I'm going to bring up the presentation. We're going to show that first. You know what? Should I bring it up? I'll bring it up. Let's see. Can everyone see the presentation? Can you let us know in the chat?
Awesome. Donna's saying yes, yes. Fabulous.
Oh, thank you guys. That's so nice of you because I really did feel so bad. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are here. You have no idea. I'm not sweating at all. Not at all.
Right? Totally.
But I've got Prosecco. What's everybody drinking? You got coffee, tea? Anyone have a glass of wine?
Yes, I have a lovely glass of wine here. Yay, yay, everyone can see it. Okay, since we are a little bit behind, Lauren, do you want to go ahead and just sort of dive right in?
We're going to get started. And just so everyone knows, this is recorded. So we will put it up. So if you like what you see, you think somebody needs to see it, then the link will be up on the blog soon, and we'll be sending you out the recording and the handout that we promised you at the end of this. So let me first introduce myself. My name is Lauren Bradley. My voice is actually going because I've been in so many webinars lately. I've been doing lots for other partners, lots for the officials. So please excuse my voice, it is going. But welcome, I'm Lauren Bradley. I'm the founder of The Officials. I have been an assistant for over a decade. And this year we launched The Officials, which is an affordable and quality training platform for assistants and admins. I just personally felt like there needed to be more price points in the market. And I'm really passionate about that because about 60% of our workforce are in small to medium businesses. And they just don't have the same kind of budgets that other assistants do. And I wanted them to receive the same quality training. So that's kind of the ethos behind The Officials and what I do and who I am. But today our star is really going to be Ebony. She's amazing. So Ebony is, what isn't Ebony really? She is, and actually I think I have to restart this presentation. Hold on one second, but I'll just keep talking while I do that. She is like, I keep describing her as the remote assistant. She is, I don't think I've ever met an assistant that is as has possibly a resume that's as impressive as hers, and is as in an advanced technology company, which is, her and I have had these discussions, is kind of like where companies are going. Like all companies are becoming tech companies, whether your company is a recruitment company or not, or what, everyone relies heavily on recruitment. Or I'm sorry, everyone relies heavily on technology. And so the advice she's going to give you today is not just going to be important now, but it's going to be important in the next 5 years. And in fact, it's weird because like you're doing it right now and we're saying it's like 5 years ahead. So because I was panicking when we were trying to set this up, I just have to reset up the presentation, which I'm doing right now. But I'm going to introduce you to Ebony now while I pull this up. This is Ebony Bellhumer. She is also the founder and curator of the Assistant List. So Ebony, why don't you take from here and I'll pop up the presentation.
Awesome. Sounds good. So first of all, I'm super excited to have you all here. I'll give you a little bit of a background on myself. I've been an executive assistant for over 7 years. I've worked in a wide variety of industries, including nonprofits, academia, corporate, retail, in addition to tech companies. I work closely with founders and CEOs. That's sort of my niche, but I have also worked really closely with traditional business executives, partnering to help them drive their initiatives forward. I started the Assistants List, which is just a blog that you can go and check out and read my articles where I share about my working style, sort of what I do, how I get ahead and make an impact in organizations. So some of the brands that I've worked with, I think most of you have probably heard of, including supporting the president and CEO of Sephora, the founder and CEO of Twitch, once they were post $1 billion acquisition by Amazon. So working closely with both Andy Jassy and Jeff Bezos. And then at Sephora, my boss reported directly to Bernard Arnault, who is the head of all of LVMH. And now I work with the founder and CEO of a company called Protocol Labs. And my boss invented something called the Interplanetary File Sharing System, which the internet is currently based around HTTPS protocols. He invented a new protocol that has really fueled the Web3 movement. Eventually, like, we will all move to a distributed web in the next 5 to 10 years, and we are spearheading the effort there. He also invented something called Filecoin, which is an amazing native token, which, if you haven't heard of it now, in about 2 years' time, we are launching at the end of this year, you will probably hear a lot about Filecoin. He is close with the founder of Ethereum, as well as working closely with a lot of the lead thinkers in Bitcoin and generally in the broader crypto space. So I work closely with all of the people, the minds behind blockchain, who are really at the forefront of emerging technology around the world. That being said, I want to just welcome everyone and just say I am so glad to have you here. The first 5 seconds, I would like for everyone to just sort of take a deep breath with me. And this is something that I've actually started instituting in my meetings. At the beginning, I ask everyone to just take a deep breath. In through your nose, out through your mouth, getting some of that carbon dioxide out, oxygenating our brains and the rest of our bodies. And I realized that this is really sort of the first time in the day that I actually take a deep breath. There is so much stress and chaos whirling around all of us. It can be incredibly unnerving, and we don't even realize how much tension we're actually holding in ourselves. And helping to set that emotional tone at the beginning of meetings, here's kind of a sneak tip for you all, can be incredibly powerful and really transform the level of productivity that you find out of these meetings. I want to say that, like, I share my background and the work that I'm doing, not to sort of brag or talk highly about myself, but because I think it's important that everybody who is listening to advice understand the person that they're getting advice from. It's one thing to sort of be able to write this down and read a book and say something. It's another thing to do it day in and day out. And that's what I do as an executive assistant to the founder and CEO of Protocol Labs. We are a 150-person company. We speak over 7 languages in my organization. My boss actually lives on the opposite side of the world in Silicon Valley, and I live here in France with my husband and 3 beautiful children. I have worked primarily in Los Angeles and in Silicon Valley, where both Sephora and Twitch are based, as well as Protocol Labs to some extent. But I'm constantly calendaring and working with a leadership team all across the globe at all different time zones with varying priorities and distractions. So this is actually what I do day in and day out in my everyday job. This isn't something that I'm sort of from an ivory tower writing about, or I haven't been an assistant, in 10 or 15 years. I do this every single day. So with that, I want to, next slide, please, Lauren. I want to ask everyone today, why are you here? I think there are a variety of reasons why people have come. And one of the things that we love to do is sort of get an assessment of why you're here and help you get clarity on what you want to get out of this webinar. So I want you to just put in the chat what number sort of resonates with you. Are you here because you are worried about the fiscal health of your company, the global economy? Are you overwhelmed with the stress of work, having to work from home, trying to figure out your remote lifestyle? Are you busy taking care of others? A lot of moms here are spending time with our kids. Are you motivated and excited, concerned, but still motivated to learn and up-level your skills during this time because there is a unique opportunity to really dive into this? Are you scared? That is something a lot of us probably feel. Curious. I'm seeing a lot of curious come out, which is great because I think this is a topic that piques a lot of curiosity for many assistants, because most of us don't have access to training that tells us this is what you need to do in order to make an impact with your executive across your broader organization, and how you can really stamp yourself into your org without living with the constant dread and fear of, is my work valued? Am I going to be here next week? Motivated, that is super exciting. I love seeing motivation in the chat. Worried, yes, that is certainly, I think this is a time where worry absolutely makes sense, but we really want to help everyone to sort of ease out of the conversation of now and shift into the conversation of next. So a lot of talk has been happening on the now, what's happening now. There's a ton of emergencies. Companies are moving to remote work, but we need to start using this time to shift our focus to what happens next. What do our orgs look like in 6 months' time, in 1 year time? What does the global economy look like in 1 year's time? What do our jobs look like in 1 year's time? Are we the kind of people who are going to come out of this better, or having sort of sat around and still don't know what to do? So I'm trying to, the goal of this webinar that Lauren and I are hosting is to really help you all move from that conversation of now into next. So I'm going to be sharing the 3 keys that I believe are the 3 key areas that are going to allow you to contribute meaningfully and make an impact in your organization while you are working from home right now. So next slide, please, Lauren. So we're going to talk about being a culture builder, the business case for being a culture builder, which I think is a key area. This is one of the gaps that is really difficult for administrative assistants to bridge, because we do all of these things, but we don't know how to tie it back to business. We don't know how to make the case for the work that we're doing. And I want to talk about changing the narrative for being a culture builder. Providing analysis. I think this is one of the most unique opportunities that assistants have to become analysts in their companies, and to really engage in data-driven decision making. And then finally, we're going to talk about becoming a meeting hero, but not in the ways that you hear. This is not about, taking the most notes that you possibly can, but this is the most high impact work that I have done across my career, which is become a meeting hero. In every single position I've had, whether it was supporting Calvin in a 10,000 person company across the United States and the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere of the United States, or working with Emmett across the global organization of Twitch, is being a meeting hero. And we're going to talk about exactly how I've done that. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in, and we're going to start with being a culture builder. So next slide, please, Lauren. The business case of being a culture builder. So we all know that organizations are suffering from disengagement, and lack of engagement actually costs organizations millions of dollars in productivity every single year. Raise your hand or +1 in the chat if you've been in an organization or currently are where disengagement is rife. People have checked out. No one is giving 100%. Blame shifting is happening everywhere. There is no skin in the game. No one has stepped up to take responsibility for a lot of work. I'm seeing a lot of +1s. We've all been there, right? And what happens to a lot of leaders is rather than taking a forceful approach to say, I want to address my company culture, they would rather let sleeping dogs lie because they have so much work on their plate and they just don't know how to effectively engage people across their cultures. We think that the other thing that happens, we know research has shown that like disengagement usually leads to toxic cultures, which results in an inability of companies to, they first lose top talent, right? Which can be incredibly dangerous over the long term, but it also results in an inability to attract top talent. We all know Glassdoor is out there. It's telling everyone, everyone's business. You can find out in a flash, and the best people in the world are always checking their references about companies that they're going to. And they're not going to places where companies are toxic and their culture is not robust and sustained. There's a reason that every single major burgeoning tech company in the world is constantly boasting about their culture, because more and more, especially as millennials and younger generations flood into the workplace, people care about the kind of company that they spend all of their time with. So companies that fail to prioritize this are planning to fail over the long term. And this is something that you're seeing very large traditional industry companies start to invest energy and time in. The thing is that they don't have dedicated people on their staff who are working on this. This is not something that HR typically owns, even though, you know, they say they do. There's a really big gap in trust between HR and sort of the everyday employer, with the employee, which is why it's so important that assistants use this, see this opening and this gap and step into it effectively. So Lauren, next slide, please. This is something that you can speak directly to your executive about. This is about how you tie back the work you're doing with culture building to your performance reviews and those conversations that you're having with your boss. You need to paint this picture and create this narrative so that they see how important the work you're doing here is. I'm asking each of you to lean into your capacity for influence in culture. I believe that like being able to corral people, to engage people is actually a superpower. And it's something that like when companies have more people with that kind of superpower, they're going to have longevity, increased commitment, and better productivity because trust will have been built there. So a couple strategies that I use every day to nurture and embrace the culture at my company. One of the things I think is really important to do is to engage people where they're at. And I do that if your company is using Slack or potentially Microsoft Teams, which I think most people are, given that like we're all working from home now. Start and join fun conversations. One of the things I love to do is start amazing conversations and channels in my Slack at my company. So I've started things like parents at PL. I've started things like the pub, where we just go if people want to have a drink on Slack, hang out, talk, share hilarious memes. I join and lead those conversations. And I do that by bringing my whole self to work. So if I have a hobby or my kid has done something awesome, I'm able to share those experiences because I'm not cutting myself off from bringing all of me to the fore. I think it's really important that assistants start nurturing those conversations and begin building those bridges of trust between people. When people feel that their 5 needs, as Laura talks about in her article, managing through crises, she talks about the 5 needs that each person has in order to feel successful and supported at work. One of those is belonging, impact, empowerment. They need to feel and feel productive. The way that we work as assistants is by nurturing belonging, nurturing a sense of belonging. So when we engage in those one-off conversations, someone shares a poem, someone shares their art, we become the people as like writing and responding immediately, like, this is so great, love to see this, this is really awesome, finding interesting factoids to share with other people. We become the people who are nurturing the cultural like foundations at our company. The second thing I will tell you why this is incredibly powerful is this leads to a deep sense of job stability. No company, and I mean no company, wants to fire their lead culture people because they know how dangerous that can be. It's the reason that it's very difficult for senior executives to get fired because of the visibility that they have. When you become a culture nurturer, you put yourself in a position of high visibility. not only high visibility, but also high impact. And when you combine those two things, you're talking about serious job security. One of the things that I always do when I meet with my executive each quarter, I ask them, if I told you I was leaving in 2 weeks, how hard would you fight to keep me? If you have not asked your executive that question and you're not sure of the answer of that question, this is the time to start reevaluating where you're making your impact. And it doesn't need to be like overly cheesy or like I'm always smiling and sunny. It could mean taking leadership by showing vulnerability first. That can be incredibly powerful as well. So start being a culture builder. The second thing you can do to start being a culture builder, a lot of companies talk about, like when they interview people, we're looking for somebody who can be, who can be a culture fit. But what companies are increasingly moving towards isn't culture fit, it's culture add. How can you add and contribute to creating a robust culture that people want to be a part of, that people want to spend time with and show their families to? You have to start demonstrating that you can be a culture add. And there's a wide variety of ways to do that, not just by starting fun conversations, things like nurturing and supporting other people who are doing that, shining a light on people who are doing amazing things, and making sure that you're the person who's in those conversations, being the point of encouragement. I call it operational glue work. I should probably link this talk that was given on glue work and how important it is to organizations and how it very rarely gets recognized. The talk is from an engineering perspective, but I'm working on a white paper that talks about operational glue work from an operations and administrative perspective, and how important it is to privilege work that, although it's difficult to, how do you measure what you can't count, essentially, and leading the conversation in that area. The second thing I will say is to really find ways to make meetings a cultural moment. So especially in remote organizations or when you're working remotely, it can be difficult to sort of nurture that kind of connectivity that you would see happening in person. Somebody walks in, they're talking about their favorite episode of The Handmaid's Tale or The Walking Dead, and you all share a laugh and people continue talking about that. You have to intentionally curate those cultural moments in meetings. And the way you can do that is by doing things like sourcing really fun backgrounds for people to talk about, having themed meetings, doing things like Munch Madness, and making moments happen that people can invest in and rally around and feel good about together. And those things don't just happen by accident, especially in remote organizations. It's really up to you to drive that and spearhead that. And that comes from like creativity, ingenuity, but also research. There are so many organizations that are remote that have really open books. They talk about their process. They write amazing blogs. I'm thinking about companies like GitLab, Buffer, Automatic, WordPress. The company that runs WordPress, for example, which does about 36% of all internet traffic in the world, is fully remote. That's crazy when you think about it. 36% of all of the internet's traffic happens across WordPress, and that company is fully remote. They published a ton of what best practices they've put in place to create an engaged employee base. Read those articles, find nuggets of gold, figure out how to tailor and apply them to your own organization from a cultural standpoint. And at the end of the year, you'll be documenting these wins that you've done, and you'll be able to point back to how you've made an impact and be able to quantify that and change the narrative from I'm completing tasks to I'm making a substantive and monetary impact that affects not only our bottom line, but our long-term security. And those kinds of conversations are really difficult to ignore, even if they come from, no matter who they come from. So I'll move on to the second key, which I call provide analysis. So next slide, please, Lauren. So one of the things that I've learned to do in my role as the founder's assistant is to do something that we think is really important, and that's called logging our learnings. You've probably heard a lot about data-driven decision-making in articles in HBR, Harvard Business Review, or Fortune. It's a big buzzword, and it has been sort of for the last 5 or 6 years. And it's going to continue to be a big buzzword because, as Lauren mentioned previously, software is eating the world. That means every company is engaged in some level of technology, whether that be SaaS, selling to directly to your company, your customers online. We are all using software. We're all trying to figure out, every company is trying to figure out how to leverage software to make more money, to attract talent. That's happening right now, and it's going to continue to happen over the next 5 years. And only people who can demonstrate that that they have a proven ability to make an impact will be the kind of people who have long-term success in the workforce. And many people are going to, unfortunately, be left behind. So one of the things I encourage all assistants to do is start getting familiar with providing analysis. What do I mean? Do we all need to become data scientists? No, we don't all need to go back to get our MBA or anything like that. I don't have my MBA, but I have learned how to provide data-driven decision-making and support best practices for productivity and alignment across my leadership team by doing this. So what we do is, what I do is I log my learnings. The way I do this is I create retrospectives for all the projects or tasks that we're doing, and then I keep them compiled in the spreadsheet. So what you're going to do when you're creating a retro is you're going to ask a couple of essential questions. Let's say, for example, you hosted a recent all hands for your company. You're going to talk about first what went right, and then you're going to explicate the how and the why. So, for example, we had high engagement. There was then talk about how and why you got there. We think people were really engaged because we sang a happy birthday song. We think that people were super excited because this was an awesome theme that people got to vote on. We were clear in our email communications about what people could expect. And then you'll talk about, in the next section of your document, you'll say what went wrong. And then you'll explicate the how and the why. And you should do this on your own time, you should do this in your own time. You'll talk about, maybe people, dropped off early. Maybe there weren't enough, maybe the agenda was too long and it wasn't clear. You'll walk down the how and the why. And then in the bottom third portion of the section of the document, what you'll do is you'll go over proposals for how you can improve on this. So these need to be research-backed proposals. So go to Harvard Business Review, head over to Fortune, the Washington Post, look at companies like Buffer or companies across your industry, find their blogs. What are their thought leaders saying? Link those back in this document. And then talk about the decisions that you'd like to see changed in that particular task or department. Hey, the leadership team is working on getting together for their annual review, but the meeting went over, people couldn't find the hotel, no one knew what was going on, there wasn't a clear owner for the agenda. Being able to document those kinds of things and then point back to an artifact that can be viewed and reviewed throughout time is one of the most important things any organization can have right now. If you are not doing this, I encourage you to begin doing this as soon as possible. I keep all of my retros in a spreadsheet. So when these decisions inevitably come up again, which they do, some companies have cyclical problems, and being able to drive them away from those cyclical problems into something new that is altogether more efficient and better, you being able to spearhead that by providing data around the decisions that have been made, and probably more importantly, how those decisions get made. Have 30% of the meetings this year gone over? Yeah, they have, because we weren't clear about the agenda when we started, versus coming in and saying, I think we could do this better. I point to a retrospective that has documentation and numbers behind it. Being able to do that is probably one of the most important things that you can do. For people right now who find themselves maybe with less work, I know some people definitely have more work, but people who find themselves with less work, this will be really important for you to step in and fill this gap right now. Quite a number of people I've seen on a wide variety of platforms have said, I'm not sure what I could be doing right now. This is the kind of thing that you could be doing. finding out what's working right now in our remote culture. Where are there gaps? Are people not clear about what expectations are for them? Write that down in your, call it 1 week remote retrospective. You don't need to say retro. You can say retrospective. That's just like tech jargon. 1 week remote retro, and you'll talk about what's going well. I don't care if this is just happens between you and your executive, which is where most of this started for me. I began to log my learnings with my executive so that every week when we had our one-on-one, I could talk about specifically what went well this week, why and how did that go well. Well, we made every meeting on time and we were able to exit on time. How did that happen? That happened because we had a meeting facilitator who was time checking and making sure at the close of the meeting, we were aligned on action items. Great, let's continue doing that. What didn't go well? Well, you didn't have enough time to review these documents, provide feedback, and do candidate interviews. How did that happen? We were overcommitted on meetings. How can we streamline these meetings? How can we eliminate some of these meetings? Then I'm taking an audit of all of the meetings he has. Where are we getting the most value? Like, where are we getting the most return on our temporal investment? Okay, maybe that's a little confusing term. A temporal investment. The time that my executive is investing in this meeting, what return is he getting on that? Are we getting decisions made that are making us money? Or are these dialogues and primarily alignment meetings? This kind of deep work that Cal Newport talks about in his book, Deep Work, please read that if you haven't, will really set you apart from what everyone else is doing. This is what I call asking high value questions. And that's what you do when you're analyzing data. You start asking high value questions. How can I help here? If you start asking yourself how you can help, I guarantee you will find creative answers and solutions. So the reason I say that all of this matters is because you want to do something that's really important and be able to point back to. Creating shared understanding of the team. This is like an OKR, which is an objective and key result that you can point back to during your review or one-on-ones with your leader. This is what I do. I drive alignment. I create efficiency. I penetrate communication silos. This is how you do that, by asking really high value questions through your data analysis. And then finally, we'll talk about being a meeting hero. And this is what I said previously. Next slide, please, Lauren. Sorry if I'm going too fast. The one thing I like to talk, there's two things I like to talk about in being a meeting hero. The first is emotionally intelligent calendaring, and the second is accountability. This is single-handedly the feedback that I have gotten throughout my career that has put me in the position where I am now, making well over 6 figures, living my life outside of Paris, traveling to Europe, my boss working wherever he is, and getting to be where I want to be in my career, is because I have prioritized these two things. I have made excellence in these areas my top priority. Emotionally intelligent calendaring is a new term in the assistant world. Well, I don't even know if it's in the assistant world. Frankly, I haven't heard it before except for myself, but it's really important because this is something that you'll be able to, again, point out in your at the end of the year when you're meeting with your executive. When you talk about the importance of emotionally intelligent calendaring, you talk and you point back to productivity. A couple things that you want to do while you're figuring out how to do this as a best practice. So consider, is my boss more productive before or after lunch? Are the people he's meeting with, do they have children? Is it their anniversary? Are they ready to listen? How long is this meeting? Have I thought about their bandwidth? Have I approached my calendaring with a rest ethic in mind? In remote cultures, you'll hear a lot about rest ethic. And that means that we allow our brains the time to rest so they can actually process the information that they've just received in a meeting. I worked with many executives who constantly were doing the back-to-back-to-back meeting scheduling. And they found that they were resistant at first to creating recalibration breaks. which is what we use. We use recalibration breaks. They were resistant because they wanted to sort of maximize the in-person time they could get with people. But what they really couldn't, what they were missing was the opportunity for their brain to actually process this information. And I should probably send out some links that you all can use when you're speaking with your executives. They're actually less productive from the standpoint of being able to process the information that they're hearing and put it to use than if they had recalibration breaks. So considering all of those things while you're doing your scheduling is how you actually become a force multiplier or become a 10xer. In engineering, it's called being a 10xer, right? You want to say like, hey, I'm going to 10x you now. Because what we're going to do is we're going to first do analysis on where you're spending your time. Like, are we getting value for our temporal investment? Look, you don't have to use that term, but it just is easy for me to say. I'm like, every day we're making a temporal investment. We only have 8 hours of work. We have to be sure that we're getting value for that. Could these one-on-ones that are important, but could they be moved to a bi-weekly cadence? Do we have an agenda before this meeting? And if we don't, are we willing to make the trade-off and say like, hey, we don't have an agenda. This could be a full waste of time. And I'll link you all to like, how much does this meeting cost? Because that's a really important one too. The second thing I want to talk quickly about is accountability. This is really where you're going to add the most value from everything else I've said. Data analysis is important, absolutely. Being a culture hero is huge. Accountability is really the sweet spot of every single assistant. We work for people who are strategic thinkers. They have big pictures and they set where the North Star is going to lay in the sky. The only way to get to that North Star is for someone to manage every single detail there. So we don't set direction, but we are the fuel of productivity across our organization, period. If you play your job appropriately. What that means is it doesn't mean that you're transcribing every single word that was said in a meeting. It means that you're able to capture room intelligence. That means you're able to accurately reflect the decision points and the rationales for those decision points in your notes. Then you're able to track and insist on alignment and action items after the fact, whether or not you were in the room for that meeting. So I don't want to hear I don't get to go to those meetings. I talked to Lori about this today. You go on safari. What does that mean? You should be out here hunting for information. Stan, I know you met with Phil last week. What did you all align on in that meeting? Philip, I know you met with Todd last week. What were the alignments and the decisions made? First, that holds people accountable and they're like, oh, snap, somebody's listening and thinking about what I'm doing. Yeah, you know what? We did say we were going to meet there. The only way all of these big dreams happen is with 1,000 little decisions and steps and someone monitoring tracking the progress and commitments that people have leveled themselves up to. Without a record or artifact of what was said and committed to, it's impossible to align and to drive decisions to completion. That will never happen. So being a point of accountability is one of the most important strategic roles you can play as an assistant. Even if it doesn't happen across the broader leadership team, if you're not working with a CEO, it should be happening across your broader leadership team. So you should be meeting with all of your executives, reports, one-on-one, following up with them, going on safari, hunting this information down and finding it. It is not your executive's responsibility to feed you information. You're not an input machine, you're an output machine. I ask high value questions and I make sure that I'm seeking out information. So those are the things I wanted to leave you with. My final thoughts are just kind of, we're in a time of chaos. I want to make sure that everybody is understanding that we don't want to recreate what has happened in the past. We want to innovate for what's going on in the future. And that means really leaning into how you can get new best practices around remote work. I could talk all day about like Conway's Law and all of that jazz, but I know everyone has like a ton of time and I also have to get back to work. So I guess that's it for me.
That was amazing, Ebony. Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions. Sorry, my voice is really going. It's just one of those days. So the first question is from Barbara, who is very sweet. I know she's in New York. At this time, I do not have very much work since I am working from home. My executive is busy attending virtual meetings, but does not need a hand with anything. I'm worried about the impact that will have the relevance that this will have on the relevance of my position. Do you have any advice on that? I know that question's come up before from the remote assistant course. We've had some members ask that question. So what would you say there, Ebony?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I would start asking specifically, not to my executive, how can I help? I want to make sure first that you have a full understanding of your executive's operational scope of work. So I'm sorry, who asked this question? Brenda? I
It was
feel like.
Barbara. Barbara.
Barbara, do you have a full understanding of what commitments your executive is invested in? What decisions does he or she have to make? And when do those decisions have to be made? If you feel that you have a full understanding of what their scope of work is, and that you're truly not needed, then I would say, like, for sure, you should probably consider, like, quietly, potentially looking for another role. Not as a bad thing, but you certainly don't want to be in a place where if you do an analysis of what's actually happening and your boss doesn't need you, it doesn't bode well for the long term, the longevity of your position there. If you do want to find additional ways to sort of jump in and step in, I would lean into becoming a culture builder as much as possible. But I would also ask people who report to your boss. Go on Safari in that area and find out what decisions your boss has committed to. Has their scope of work actually grown? How you can take things off of their plate. Find out, like, the people that go up to your boss, because if they have an assistant, I'm pretty sure they probably have people that report up to them. Get to know sort of what does the lay of the land look like there. And I'd also be curious to know sort of like, what is the diff between sort of the work that you did in person? Was that primarily like, what kind of support did you provide? Was that primarily sort of like running errands or, getting dry cleaning, or was it more strategic support? If it's not possible for you to provide the same traditional logistical support that you did, making sure, their house cleaner came and things like that, it's time to start thinking about how you can make a strategic impact. I would personally ask to be attending meetings that my executive attends. I've never ever been in a position or a role where I have not attended at minimum 30% of my executives' meetings. There's absolutely no way I would consider us being able to have any real alignment if I wasn't attending a minimum of 30% of those meetings. And I will say, I have never worked for anyone who, when I asked, has said no. If they did say no, I would be really hesitant to partner with them, because in my estimation, they're not looking for a thought partner. They're looking for somebody to, like, maybe do just logistical work of, kind of dog walking and like going to get coffee and, booking airplanes, which is fine, but it's like TripActions can do that for you. And so can, a million other apps. Being an assistant, in my understanding, is about I don't work for people, I work with people. Those are the only jobs that I take. Those are the only jobs I encourage people to take. If you have to, for financial reasons, be in a job where you have to work for someone, that is fine. Make sure you are building your skill set while you are there, and that you're getting a return for your investment here. That I'm learning new skills, I'm being able to document this, and when I leave here, I will have an amazing reference. So those are, I guess those are the tips. But Barbara, DM me, or we can chat too. Don't worry, for additional tips.
That was really good, Ebony. We have another one. I have 3 managers. This is from Tracy. I have 3 managers, all very different personalities. 2 like the breaks in between meetings, and 1 is happy to work back to back. I'm always asking them, are you sure? It makes my stomach turn over seeing it sometimes. How can I work around this and change their mindset? So
yeah, I would definitely make sure that I bring data. I have worked for my last 2 bosses have all been 35 or younger. So they're really like data driven dudes. They care about as much data that you can bring them. So when I come to my one-on-ones, at first I see the idea. It doesn't just all happen in once. You know, these things take time. These, you know, executives are used to making decisions on their own. So it absolutely takes time. I want to start by feeding the idea and start kind of by sharing works. I would even like, you know, share an article from Cal Newport, who wrote the book Deep Work, as like a great, you know, like, hey, this isn't me saying this. Like, I just read something that a bunch of scientists have said on how to maximize productivity, and how to get the most out of your day by not doing this. And then I would, you know, casually, not forcefully, but very diplomatically and with a lot of tact, bring it up at a one-on-one, maybe once a month, you know, and in, from a perspective of concern, right? From a very empathetic orientation, you know, hey, you know, Friday or Tuesday went really long, you know, are you feeling, you know, fatigue or, you know, anything? I'm also just wondering, you know, I want you to be able to make time to relax, and also just sort of unwind and step away from work. So, you know, what about if we experimented? I love to use the word experiment, because people are a lot more excited about the term experiment than like, oh, let's try something, like, oh, that we can try and fail. But experiment to decide, which is a value that we had at my previous company, sounds really intriguing, and a little bit more sexy than let's try and fail. Let's experiment to decide if this is a good thing. Um, Again, seeding the idea, and then, you know, talk about maybe in a month or two, like, how about we experiment to decide on this and see if, you know, having recalibration breaks, not a ton, maybe let's start with 2, right? So we go 3 hours back to back, we do a 30-minute calibration break, you know, we do 2 hours and then another recalibration break. Let's experiment to decide and see how we feel about this. Maybe that isn't their working style, which is totally fine. Everyone is different. But I would try to phrase it that way. I hope that helps. But again, feel free to DM me or something.
We have one more, and I really like this one as someone that worked in higher education for a long time and studied instructional design and is now has a learning platform. I think this is a great question from Megan, who says, I'm interested to hear more about your experience in academia. Do you have resources on your website? I work in California. I'm looking for resources for my other staff members at college. Working remotely in academia has been an interesting adventure, I can imagine.
Yeah, so I used to work for Pepperdine University, which was an awesome experience. I currently work for Protocol Labs, which we are part research lab, part fintech company. So we have a whole entire department dedicated to academia. We do really amazing things. Well, I will say we have quite a number of independent researchers, and academia is much more traditional and maybe like a little bit less progressive in the ways that, you know, I think their culture develops. So it can be interesting. I think that like creating like really fun, interesting things that maybe don't push the boundaries too far, can be like ways to create a really awesome culture and stuff like that in your company. But if you're asking sort of about working with researchers or students, I would say, you know, students, I feel like they all want to be heard, and their struggle to be acknowledged, because I don't think many people sort of stop and acknowledge just like how difficult it is to be a student. Many of them are under like crushing student loan debt. So I always tried to be like incredibly patient with them, if they've had a tough exam or they feel overwhelmed, especially if they're graduate students, which is the group that I primarily worked with. But yeah, so I guess like, is the question like, how can we like help the other assistants work more closely together, or just like generally?
While
I'm
we,
sorry, maybe my internet's
no,
horrible.
that's okay. While we wait for that, we have,
Okay.
how about we take one more question?
Resources, I don't really have
Yeah, I
anything on
think,
my I don't have anything except on my blog, but you can go visit my blog or just ping me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. So
Um, that was a great question. That was really good advice because you hit the nail on the head with students, and to be honest, employees. It's the
yeah.
same. Okay, we have another question. I have just started a new role this week, and my new executive. That's a tough time to start a role. My new executive is very busy, and I wanted to know what things you made sure you knew asked when you started working with a new
Okay, wait, say that
executive.
again. Lauren, you cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me start again. I just started a new role this week, and my new executive is very busy and wanted to know what things you asked and made sure you knew when you started with working with a new executive.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this. This is awesome because I'm like the biggest onboarding advocate in the world. I believe that assistants are responsible for or should feel responsible for onboarding themselves. So I don't start any position without deeply investing in the first 90 days. Because what will happen is you'll get your job, you'll be super excited. Everyone's like, oh, you should listen so much. That's not really empowering advice. What I encourage assistants to do is to sit with their executive and to ask them specifically to identify what expectations they have for you after 90 days. After 90 days, you expect me to fully own your calendar, be able to prioritize meetings against each other independently, or still be checking in with you? Do you expect me to be sitting in with meetings, having built relationships with your important cross stakeholders? Do you expect me to be attending meetings, owning documentation, owning small projects? So get clear on what the expectations are after 90 days. I say this because at the 90-day mark, what will happen is they'll have a check-in, which is really an evaluation. It's a performance evaluation masquerading as a check-in. And at 90 days, they're going to decide whether you are the person who will stay and grow and be promoted in your organization, whether you'll stay and be stagnant. This person is only capable of being an assistant. It's very hard to change minds after that and requires a really heavy lift from you. So in this first week, what I would do is demonstrate to my executive that I am the kind of person who takes initiative. I am a self-starter. I'm self-motivated. And I'm actually taking mental bandwidth off of that person. So it's not them saying like, oh, executive, tell me what to do. It's saying, here's the list of things I believe that I need to have expertise in or made really significant progress in at the 30, 60, and 90-day period. If you haven't read it, you should read the book, The First 90 Days. It is incredibly empowering. It talks about the importance of listening, but it also talks about the importance of identifying things like quick kills. In the first 30 days, I always talk about, I will have identified and then aligned with you on what quick kills we can see. I'm going to take an audit of like, where is my boss wasting the most time, and I can quickly address it. I'm going to identify at 60 days what kinds of midterm projects I could be taking over for my executive. And then I talk about at 90 days, I will have identified what items are candidates for what I call long-term redesign. So a long-term redesign may mean we need to change the meeting culture within your organization or your department. That's not something I'm going to come in and change in the first 90 days. It's going to require a 3 to 12, month investment and a commitment on both parties' part, right? So in the first 30 days, you should have met with all of his important cross stakeholders. You should have created meetings to meet with other administrative assistants and executive assistants. You should be getting up to speed on the biggest pain points and the company objectives at that point. In this next 60 days, you should be learning, like I always start big and then go small. So it should be a triangle. I'm swallowing as much as I can about the company, our priorities, our top line objectives, who our competitors are in this space. Then in the next 60 days, on the second level of the triangle, I'm doing things like identifying what my organizations or department specific goals are. What are some of the challenges that we're facing? I'm going to do this again with diplomacy and tact by connecting with the important stakeholders, making sure that I'm scheduling one-on-ones and not being a burden to other people. The worst thing you can do as an assistant is come into your organization, and then ask people to do things for you. It's totally counterintuitive. It's the complete opposite of what you want to do. Most of us never have onboarding is the second thing, because it's just kind of like, oh, here's the company. I don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You figure it out. So when you come with a 30, 60, 90-day plan and you insist on meeting with your executive, especially at those points, but ideally weekly, your boss will be blown away. They will be relieved that they hired someone with the ingenuity and initiative to lead their own onboarding. They will be so elated that you're the kind of person who's already understands the strategic relationships that you need to be developing in order to be successful. You have no idea. This is like one of like every single boss I've ever had comes in when I do this and they're like, oh, thank God I hired this girl who is about to come in here and change shit and make sure that our lives are together. And she's not looking to me like, are you going to tell me what to do? Can you tell me? Don't let them do that. Don't let them feel that for a second. Make sure they know that you researched what people should understand in the first 30, 60, and 90 days of a company. That when your 90-day check-in comes in, there's no room for misalignment or miscommunication because you already put markers in the calendar for where you both need to be at that point. But I could go all day on about this. Please, message me on LinkedIn or whatever.
I think we just figured out what our next course together is, Ebony.
Yeah, I know. We should do onboarding, right? I love
Honestly.
onboarding.
So this is something over on the officials blog also is an executive questionnaire that is free to download, which is all the questions that I always use, just the practical questions of like getting to know your executive as well, just to add to this. And you can download it, but it's like, who's your spouse? Who are the important people on your team? What are the goals of the business? What are your goals for the next 6 months? What are the values of the company? What's your credit card number and passport number?
Yeah,
like that
for sure.
type of information that you need to get, because they don't give you that. And if you're booking a flight, which obviously you're not doing right now, but if you were, and you suddenly go, oh yeah, I can do that. And then it's like, oh wait, I need your address. Oh wait, I need your date of birth. Oh wait, I need your passport. And it ends up slowing the process down. So getting all this information up front kind of sets the tone that you just are like, listen, we're going to, I need this information to be able to think as you. And I loved when you were like, people are like, who is this woman? Thank you for just, because they want you, I think more often than not, they want you to come in and take control, right? They want you to manage them.
That's exactly what they want. They feel relieved when they know they're like, they've hired somebody who is like, I'm a manager, I'm managing you. Like,
you don't need to manage me. I don't need to soak up your time.
Yes.
I think you've nailed that. And everything that you've said is basically aligns with that as well on all the different tips that you've given. I can tell you right now, the feedback in the group, just in the chat, has been incredible. There's another question on here, but we're gonna leave this. Sadly, we're gonna run out of time, so we're gonna leave this question. I'm gonna answer it shortly in this way. The question is, do you have any tip that could help me to reinforce the business culture in my team those days of remote work? So Ebony has kind of answered some of these, but Ebony has actually written an entire course on remote working for assistants that's available through the officials, and she covers some of this information. As I said at the beginning of this, the officials is committed to quality,
super affordability,
affordable training.
Yes, which is why I work with you, Lauren, because let me just tell you, there are so many people who do trainings and it's just like general stuff of like, oh, you should be this isn't general. I am an assistant every day. I believe that people shouldn't be charging people $1 million to learn really important stuff to be better at what you do. It shouldn't be like, this is $1,000 and $1,500. Like, no, it should be a reasonable price. Look, I'm just
gonna let you sell it for me, girl. Like, I love this.
I collaborate with Lauren because you're not a price gouger. You care about having deeply relevant information that's going to help people rather than sort of hand wavy, wishy-washy. Send me to my boss and tell me how to go talk to him. That's what people want to know. That's the kind of work that I do. That's what I'm sharing. I hope you all love Lauren as much as I do. I feel that her entire program is so reasonable, so affordable. And I know you also have like a 3-day free trial, right?
Yes. So actually, if so, we give a thank you to our members because our members are so wonderful and loyal that they spread the word about us all the time. So we wanted to thank them, and each of them has a unique code. Marta in here is a member. There's a few, but if anyone hits me up afterwards and wants that code, I'll hook you up with a member. Maybe we'll spread it out because they get a little thank you for spreading the word, and so we don't want to compete with them. So we'll make sure that we get you a code if you want to get into it. So essentially, every month we drop a new course. This month, well, for the last course we dropped was supposed to be travel planning. Bad timing, big time. And so I called Ebony and I was like, you're the remote assistant. Can you please work with me and let's crank out a really useful, practical course for assistants. So everyone says words like productivity, efficiency. I want to make your life easier. I want to give you tips right now. And Ebony brought the knowledge. And so essentially, it's a membership platform. We've already have several courses already in the library. As soon as you join, you get access to the entire library, and it costs $18.99 in US dollars. I've put a little if you go on the website, there's like a little link to figure out what that would be in your currency. But you have full access. You are in the driver's seat. You have access to cancel at any time. You can just take this course for the month, soak up what you can, or we hope you stick around and you like what we're releasing every month. The next month that's coming up in the next week or two, you're going to get the G Suite course. We have a course coming up on diary management, another one on KPIs and reviews, all with other collaborations as well. And we're already thinking about Ebony's next course because her and I are definitely on the same page on onboarding. So in Ebony's course alone, you get 3 course books. Each of them are somewhere between like 12 to 20 pages, but really practical advice, digestible. 9 videos from her, plus this will be going in there, and as well as our member Q&A that we're having next week, where you can actually take the course and come and ask Ebony more questions. There are 12 downloadables as well, and I think we'll be adding some book recommendations. We'll be adding some links that she's been sharing here, anything she promised you here, we're sending out to you. So don't worry, I've taken notes. It's all coming. After I do my rest ethic tonight, we'll be working on that tomorrow. And this is what you get in that course. Benefits, drawbacks, best practices, logistics, icebreakers. Here we're talking about the culture and that culture question. And just on top of the course, you immediately get access to an amazing community. There's people in here right now. Joy, Marta, Becca, Tracy, there's our members in here right now. They're probably the best community. I really do love, they're so supportive. There's no nastiness. They're just supportive, care about each other. And every Friday we do our weekly win. Really love that. And again, new courses every single month. And now we're actually gonna start dropping mini courses as well. So more than a course a month. And then of course, I do private mentoring and we have a mentorship group. Now, after this webinar, thank you guys so much for coming. We're gonna send you a handout that Ebony has created specifically for the people that attended this webinar. And we're gonna send you all the links and the books. Maybe we'll have to add a page before tomorrow, who knows, with all the information she's been giving you. Here is our contact details to reach out to us. We are very accessible. We love you guys. We hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you for being so patient when I obviously sent the wrong link. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there. Ebony, you are an angel, a legend, a goddess, a star. Do you guys see why I had to bring her in this month? Like, who else is going to give you this information? Like somebody, Ebony in here, I don't know if you saw in the chat, was like, I've been in tons of webinars in the last week, and this one has been the best one by far. You're incredible.
Awesome.
I love you.
I'm so glad to hear that. I love you, Lauren.
I love you guys. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, and I'll be coming with a follow-up email. We hope you join the officials. We hope you join us for another webinar in the future. We love you guys. We're gonna go now.
Okay, see ya.